So we would have met Aisling in Sculware kind of fifth year more so, and we became really close, and she was kind of the mammy of the group, really hardworking, organised, always taking care of us all, but always up for an adventure as well. So she'd love a night out, she loved going on long trips, and just really living her best life.
So moving to Dubai was one of Aisling's greatest adventures. She did have a kind of a life plan. She moved to Dubai, she'd be there for a few years, she'd use it as a base to travel when she had no responsibilities. And because that was her main agenda when she was out there, she was on the pill, like she didn't want to be starting a family just yet. She was going to use it as a point to travel, and she did quite a lot of travelling when she was there. She went to the States, she went to Thailand. Our friend Becca was living in Vietnam at the time. She went to visit her too. So with the school holidays, she had the means and the time to travel, and she was just loving life out there, knowing that ultimately she would come back home, and she would ultimately settle in Ireland when she was ready.
So as well as being really organised, Aisling was a very family-orientated person who had lots of parties out here at this house, and she was really a great friend as well. So in terms of being family orientated, she put her family before everything and just had really close relationships with her parents and her brothers and her granny as well. So her granny wasn't well, and she actually flew back from Dubai to see her granny and make sure she's okay. And she was a fantastic friend to us, made sure that we were okay, and always organised everything for us and made sure that we were where we needed to be in our lives, really. She was like really the mammy of the group. And she also had a boyfriend at that time who she was madly in love with, and she was the furthest ahead than any of us in that respect. Like, she had a long-term partner who she saw this life with, and that's why she was on the pill, really, because she had planned when she was going to get pregnant, when she was going to have a baby. We knew that, we thought we knew that her wedding would be the first one that we would attend, and like we knew that her kind of role in life was to be the most organised and the furthest ahead than any of us.
A few of her friends had asthma, and she was worried that she might have asthma because she was starting to have difficulty catching her breath, which wouldn't be like her because she was so fit and healthy. Not only that, but she started to get pain in her calf and it swelling in her leg. So she went to her doctor, but unfortunately he kind of cast her fears aside and told her that it wasn't a blood clot, even though that was the very thing that she had identified it as. So she went on, but the symptoms persisted, and she went back to her doctor and was told again that it wasn't anything to be worried about. They did an X-ray, and they just didn't catch what it was.
So I suppose everything changed on November 27th, 2017. I think that date's etched into all of our minds forever. But she went to school as usual, doing her passion of teaching, and she fainted, which was highly unlike her. She came to, and she was bossing everyone around, saying she was grand and trying to get everyone sorted for her not going to be there. And she and then it happened again, and she was sent off in an ambulance where she suffered numerous cardiac arrests. And I suppose as a result, she had widespread damage throughout her brain.
Yes, we were told that the cause of this was a blood clot that had originally started in her leg. Looking back on the symptoms, I guess that makes sense. She had been complaining about a pain in her leg, but because she, I guess, played tag rugby and she was young and she was fit, it was just dismissed as being, maybe a knock or a bang. But it turns out that pain in her leg was actually a clot, and that clot unfortunately travelled to her heart, then travelled to her lungs, and caused 3 cardiac arrests, which resulted in a stroke. That lack of oxygen to her brain led to serious brain damage, which was going to go on to affect the next 2.5 years of her life, and ultimately lead to a very untimely death.
So Aisling was in hospital in Dubai then, and everyone was kind of processing this news, and we didn't know what life was going to look like for her at that point. So her parents went out to her, and meanwhile the community here really got together, rallied, and did an amazing job at fundraising for her through lots of different events. But I remember we did a big walk around Trim on St Stephen's Day, and her family went out to visit her, and she was flown out to Dublin after about 8 weeks, and she was in the hospital then in Dublin. And that was really, I think, when you could see what a popular person she really was. Her family were incredible, amazing. They were there every day, really just put life on hold to be her family. Her boyfriend was amazing, really, really fantastic. Like, he stuck by her and was there to support her, but you could also see the level of friendship that she had. So many friends from different parts of her life came to visit her, and it made such a difference to her life at that point. You could really see that she appreciated seeing different people, and she had some really, really good, very, very close friends who were in there day in, day out. While the rest of us went on and got on with their lives, there were a couple of people who stayed there and looked after her and just made sure that she got all the comfort that she could get. And then as we realised that life was always going to be changed for her, she then moved to Trim, to a nursing home, and the support continued. And at that point then she could come out to the house for little visits, and we had some really amazing times in the house with her when she was, you know, using a wheelchair, was communicating in a very, very different way than she had before. She was still Aisling, but a very, very different Aisling that we know before.
The last few months for Aisling were particularly difficult. We noticed that the visits were getting harder for her. She wasn't able to communicate the way that she had been able to. Her pain was increasing, and she just was starting to suffer more and more. Eventually she was moved from the nursing home to intensive care in Navan, and eventually she passed. And after the suffering that she'd been through the last few months, it was almost a relief for Aisling and her family because of the pain that she had gone through, especially those last few weeks and months.
The most frustrating thing about this whole situation is that it was so preventable. Aisling had symptoms, Aisling had risk factors, and she went to the doctor presenting these symptoms and presenting these risk factors, and she was dismissed because at face value she was young, she was fit, she was healthy. And when we say healthy, we don't just mean that she didn't have any medical conditions. She ate well, she exercised, she really took care of herself, and because she played sports like rugby, it was easy to dismiss her symptoms as being something else. But when you look at it closer, she was on the combined oral contraceptive pill, she was regularly taking long haul flights, she had pains in her legs, she had shortness of breath, which for a young, fit, healthy individual isn't something that she should be experiencing. So those symptoms were there. And again, Aisling's not someone who'd kind of stick her head in the sand. She was going to the doctor. She was being pushy. She was being aggressive. She was saying what her symptoms were, but she was being dismissed. So I think what she really wants, you know, other young people to know in her situation, is what you can do. You could go to bypass the GP, go to A&E straight away. Tell them what your risk factors are, tell them what your symptoms are, and demand a blood test, because that's all it takes. A blood test can rule out a clot. It might not tell you what your symptoms are being caused by, but it can rule out the possibility of a clot. And it's a simple, quick and easy test to do if you push for it. And I guess, you know, not that Aisling didn't push, she really did, but if there's one good thing that can come out of this is that if more young women are aware of the risk factors and the symptoms and push even harder for a proper diagnosis, then maybe it will be preventable in the future.
Visit thrombosis.ie. Spot the signs, save a life.